Good morning, everyone. Glad to see everybody here on this beautiful day. It was a beautiful day in the city of Wilmington, North Carolina, here at UNCW, my alma mater, and I love it. And just welcome. I want to thank UNCW for hosting us today and for the work it contributes to advancing our environmental science. Here in Wilmington, we care deeply about the well-being of our community. That's why we're committed to accelerating the cleanup of PFAS contamination, safeguarding our drinking water, and holding polluters like Chemours accountable. Everyone in this crowd today is thirsty for solutions in the face of the challenge we did not create, but that we must nevertheless work on. We have come together locally to generate fixes like the new granular activated carbon filters at the Sweeney Water Treatment Plant that are highly effective at treating drinking water and removing PFAS to near non-detectable levels. Today, we are pleased to welcome EPA Administrator Regan to Wilmington. And I must say, Mr. Administrator, it's always good to see you back here in the state of North Carolina, your home state, and all of the great work that you have done on this particular issue, not only for this state when you were DEQ Secretary, but also as EPA Administrator. Now you're taking it to the national level, and we all know that all of these PFAS are in our drinking water throughout this country, not just here in the Wilmington area. So you have also created a comprehensive national strategy to confront this challenge and for answering our calls for investment in research, development, and innovation to increase our understanding of how PFAS harms people and our environment. With that, I'm honored to introduce someone who has been proactively heading up these efforts for our state. With her leadership, North Carolina has taken a leading role in demanding accountability and proposing enforceable standards for PFAS chemicals. Please join me in welcoming the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Elizabeth Beiser. Secretary Beiser? Wow, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Sappho, and good morning. And thank you to all of you for joining us here today. 9 months ago, Governor Cooper and I came to Wilmington to announce DEQ's action strategy for PFAS, our state-level plan to address PFAS contamination throughout our state. We came to Wilmington because this community and all of the communities in the 8-county region from here to Fayetteville understand PFAS better than most. And you understand that better because you've had to. You've been on the front lines of PFAS contamination since 2017, dealing with PFAS contamination from the Chemours facility. Your water systems, Catesville Public Utility Authority and Brunswick County, have collectively invested over $150 million in treatment systems to remove Gen X and related compounds from your drinking water. But we all know that PFAS is bigger than one compound or one company. PFOA and PFAS are legacy compounds widely used for decades and found in water systems across our state and around the country. In 2021, Administrator Regan announced the EPA PFAS Strategic Roadmap right here in North Carolina and promised federal action to complement the work that started here in our state in 2017 under his leadership as DEQ Secretary. Knowing that we had a strong partner in EPA, that North Carolina was not alone in this fight gave us additional tools and support for our work. As we have anticipated federal action, DEQ has been working across the state, taking a whole-of-department approach for PFAS. Under our action strategy, our approach is to research, regulate, and remediate. We focus on protecting communities through research, identifying where PFAS contamination exists. To that end, we have been working with public water systems to assess levels of PFAS and help prepare for national drinking water standards. Late last year, we sampled 50 of the municipal and county water systems across our state, those that had the levels of PFOA and PFAS above the detectable limit, and sampling that was done in 2019. We are also implementing plans to sample for PFAS at hundreds of the smaller systems across the state so that we know exactly what we are facing. While we are learning more about where PFAS exists in our state, we're also taking regulatory action to address the source of PFAS contamination. So we're requiring PFAS information from all new facilities being permitted in our state. Businesses have heard from me again and again that a healthy environment and a healthy economy go hand in hand. And the way that we achieve that is by ensuring that we're avoiding putting additional PFAS pollution into our environment. Industries must know what's in their emissions and discharges. Along those lines, we've added permit conditions where appropriate to address potential PFAS air emissions and wastewater discharges, requiring additional monitoring and disclosure. Preventing additional contamination makes more economic sense than trying to clean it up after the fact. As we look to remediate the PFAS contamination that already exists in our environment, we are prioritizing locations where forever chemicals have been used or discharged in the past for additional assessment. And this includes actions such as requiring most landfills to include PFAS analyses in their samples going forward. As we follow our action strategy to research, regulate, and remediate PFAS contamination, we want to make sure that our small, rural, and disadvantaged communities are not left behind. I was proud to stand with Administrator Regan a few weeks ago here in North Carolina as he announced another $2 billion nationwide, that's $61.7 million here in North Carolina, to address PFAS contamination in drinking water in our small, rural, and disadvantaged communities. We appreciate the leadership and the actions that they are taking to support on-the-ground action in states like ours. Everyone here today is working toward a common goal: protecting access to clean drinking water. There is a lot of work to do, and we are lucky to have partners at the EPA, our state and local leaders, university researchers, focused on protecting the health of our residents. Now, I would like to introduce Emily Donovan, co-founder of Clean Cape Fear, and someone who's been very active on our issues of PFAS. Emily?
All right, are we good?
Yep.
All right. We learned about Gen X not from our water district. We never received a notice in the mail. We first learned about Gen X from the newspaper when a local investigative reporter accidentally stumbled upon a scientific paper published 6 months prior about a whole bunch of toxic chemicals called PFAS in this town's tap water. We felt angry, worried, and betrayed. Wilmington's water district knew about the study's findings for a full year, yet hesitated to alert the public because of deficiencies in the drinking water regulatory process. At the time, we were told the water meets or exceeds all state and federal drinking water guidelines, and we quickly learned that was because there were no state and federal drinking water guidelines for PFAS. We quickly formed Clean Cape Fear, a grassroots community group, and we've been fighting these last 5 years for health equity and justice in this region. I am here today because so many others in our region that are sitting in these seats right now had the courage to tell their stories. We are not alone. There are other community groups like mine across the nation who joined together and formed the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. With the help of our allies, we've been fighting for years to get access to PFAS drinking water standards. We've begged the EPA to have the courage to hold polluters like the chemical industry, NASA, Department of Defense, and the Fire Service accountable for decades of PFAS exposures. We will continue to beg every office within the EPA and all other federal agencies to use a whole of government approach to address PFAS as a class. Stop all PFAS exposures at their source. Make responsible parties pay for the cleanup and give overexposed communities access to the health monitoring resources we deserve. Today, the EPA's Office of Water is finally moving us closer to our goals, because no one should ever wonder if the PFAS in their tap water will one day make them sick, because no one should ever have to live in a world without their Tom, or their Sarahs, or their Amy's. We all deserve access to health protective drinking water because it is a basic human right. Health protective and affordable drinking water is possible. The laws already exist. They just need to be fully enforced. If lazy water districts like the ones upstream from my friend Katie did their jobs and stopped local industries from dumping PFAS pollution down the sewer pipes, then towns like Pittsburgh could protect their residents better. There is something backwards happening in America right now. Communities like mine learned this the hard way when we traveled to Washington, D.C., and we begged Congress to protect us from PFAS polluters. We witnessed water utility associations coming in behind us and siding with the chemical industry. These associations take ratepayers' money, and instead of demanding drinking water sources be protected better, they're often actively demanding Congress and the EPA turn a blind eye to all this pollution. But today, that is starting to change. Today is about more than just PFOA and PFOS. It's about addressing commercially relevant PFAS like GenX. Today is about Administrator Regan having the courage to do what multiple administrations did not. Today is about feeling heard and seen. Today is about keeping a promise outlined in the EPA's PFAS roadmap, and today is about answered prayers. That is why it is such an honor to welcome our next speaker, U.S. EPA Administrator Michael Regan. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I want to thank Emily for that introduction, and I want to thank her for her steadfast leadership and dedication on addressing PFAS contamination across the state and across the nation. I truly, truly appreciate her. As always, it feels good to be back in my home state. There's no place like North Carolina. The people are kind, they look out for one another, and they're deeply committed to the community's well-being, as you can see in Emily's opening. Secretary Beiser, thank you for your continued leadership and your laser focus on reducing PFAS pollution in the state of North Carolina. And Mayor Saffo, thank you for welcoming me back once again to your city. We've worked together from day one on tackling PFAS pollution in our communities, and I continue to be grateful for Mayor Saffo's leadership. I'd also like to thank the EPA career staff, led by Rodica Fox, Assistant Administrator for the Office of Water, for their outstanding work and for making this day possible. For decades, PFAS have been widely used in industry and consumer products. Commonly known as forever chemicals, they can be found in everything from nonstick pans to cleaning and personal care products. It's the resilient and durable qualities that make these chemicals so useful in everyday life, but it's also what makes them particularly harmful to people in the environment. What began as a so-called miracle, groundbreaking technology meant for practicality and convenience, quickly devolved into one of the most pressing environmental and public health concerns in the modern world. These toxic chemicals are so pervasive and so long-lasting in the environment that they've been found in food, soil, and water, even in the most remote corners of our planet. These chemicals can accumulate in the body over time, and we know that long-term exposure to certain types of PFAS have been linked to serious illnesses, including cancer, liver damage, and high cholesterol. Now, I know firsthand the complex challenges that come along with addressing PFAS. During my time as Secretary of North Carolina DEQ, almost immediately after being confirmed, I was confronted with what would become one of the most challenging issues of my career. Dr. Knappe, an engineering professor at North Carolina State, and his students were conducting water sampling in the Cape Fear River when they discovered the presence of a toxic chemical compound known as GenX. As you all know, the Cape Fear River provides drinking water for approximately 1.5 million people. It didn't take long to discover that Chemours, a chemical manufacturing company in Fayetteville, had been deliberately polluting the air and water with these chemicals for decades. And to make matters worse, for all those years, no one was there to hold that company accountable. For decades, no one was there to put a stop to their negligent and indiscriminate pollution. Imagine what it feels like to be told the water flowing through your tap is contaminated. For decades, the water that you drink, the water that you use to brush your teeth and bathe your children. As the parent of a young child, this news was infuriating. And as DEQ Secretary, I knew that tackling this crisis would not be easy but that we had to address this issue head on. So we immediately revoked Chemours' discharge permit. We then issued a consent order to hold Chemours accountable, resulting in the largest fine against a corporate polluter in North Carolina's history. Unfortunately, untold stories of unchecked pollution are still happening in communities all across this country. But thanks to President Biden's leadership, one of my first actions was establishing the EPA Council on PFAS. Despite previous administration's anti-science stance, which severely strained EPA's financial and human capital, I charged this council with undertaking a comprehensive review of the problem and identifying solutions that we could implement immediately. In October of 2021, we released our PFAS strategic roadmap, a strategy that's guided by President Biden's whole of government approach to delivering clean water for all. Last November, we shared a one-year progress report right here in North Carolina that underscores the incredible work we've accomplished since 2021. From proposing to designate 2 PFAS as circular hazardous substances to beginning to distribute $10 billion in funding to address emerging contaminants. Thanks again to President Biden's unprecedented commitment to investing in America's drinking water. And so today, I am thrilled to announce that EPA is taking yet another bold step to protect public health. I'm so proud to announce that EPA is proposing the first ever national standard to protect communities from PFAS in drinking water. This is something that communities like Wilmington have been demanding for years, and today we are finally answering those calls. Specifically, EPA is proposing to establish legally enforceable levels for 6 PFAS known to occur in drinking water. Through this proposed rule, our agency is leveraging the most recent science and building on existing state efforts to combat harmful PFAS pollution. When finalized, this proposed regulation will require public water systems to monitor these chemicals. It will also require systems to notify the public and reduce the levels of these PFAS as prescribed. Folks, this is a tremendous step forward in the right direction. We anticipate that when fully implemented, this rule will prevent thousands of deaths and reduce tens of thousands of serious PFAS-related illnesses. As EPA administrator, I've had the privilege of traveling all across this great nation. I've visited big cities, small towns, and everything in between. And I can say with certainty that nothing is more gratifying than seeing firsthand how the work of this agency and state and local government brings real and lasting impacts to real people. All people deserve clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, and the opportunity to live a healthy and fulfilled life. And that's why the decisions we're making today are so vital, because they have consequences that will last for generations. I also recognize that combating such major issues like PFAS require every single level of government and every single agency, from state, local, and tribal to federal, committing to work together and act intentionally to overcome one of our greatest challenges. While this proposal is a bold step forward, there is no doubt, as Emily has indicated, that there's more work left to be done. Folks across this country deserve real solutions. They deserve clean air and water and a government that is committed to ensuring that they have access to those. In everything we do at EPA, from addressing PFAS to advancing environmental justice, we will put people and communities first. We're committed to fighting for people and communities every single day, and we're not stopping till every single person is provided the same basic and fundamental rights and protections. Thank you all. I guess we'll take a few questions for those who have questions.
About water utilities that see these regulations come out today and have to find ways to treat and fund that treatment. What kind of help might be coming their way, or how should they go about that?
You know, we President Biden has been focused on this since day one, working with Congress. And we have about $9 billion dedicated to prioritizing those water utilities and communities that are on the front lines and are resource constrained the most. We recognize that that is not enough for every single water utility in the country, but it's a shot in the arm. So there are resources for water utilities. There are dedicated resources, as Secretary Beiser mentioned, specifically for smaller rural communities. But there's also resources embedded in our budget. And you will see that as the President advocates for EPA's new budget this year, again, he's asking for more resources to continue to combat this pervasive issue. Yes.
What is the timeline for
So we're proposing today. We're going to do what we always do, which is take comment and continue to engage the community and those who will respond to this proposal. And by the end of this year, I plan to have this rule finalized so that we can put it in action as soon as possible. Yes.
we talk about the money that the federal government's putting into trying to clean up these water systems. At what point are we going to find corporations that are polluting fully responsible instead of financially putting it on the backs of the taxpayers?
You know, it's a great question, and I'm proud to say we're walking and chewing gum at the same time. I have said from day one that this administration is not afraid to use its enforcement authority against companies like DuPont, Chemours, 3M. And you will see that EPA is already taking action all across the country, holding these polluters accountable. For me, it started here in North Carolina with Chemours, with a relentless laser focus on holding them accountable, and that has continued under President Biden's leadership. Yes.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm curious, are we going to prioritize finding the full impact on our bodies? Like, I've been exposed to this water. I grew up here. My cholesterol was 250 and I was only 26 years old. How are we going to find out what's been going on with our bodies? And how, because that's really important in being able to hold these guys fully accountable for what they've done to us.
Sure. Yes, I agree, and that's why the president has asked for a whole of government approach. That's why the department or the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the CDC, and others are actively engaged in the pursuit of those facts that you've just laid out. We recognize that EPA has only a partial role in this journey, and that every federal agency has a role to play. And so it's going to take a whole of government approach to hold these companies fully accountable and to make communities like Wilmington whole.
Those numbers are very low, single digit, hundreds of trillion. How should Americans feel about the safety of their drinking water, given this is probably going to be detected in a lot of communities?
You know, I think that what I advise is every community closely monitor and stay in touch with what local health agencies and governments are indicating about the specific levels within each and every community. You will note that Wilmington and communities all across this country have already been proactively making investments, the kind of investments to keep communities safe. I wish that as Secretary of DEQ, I had a partner at the federal level at EPA. We would be here much sooner. You know, under President Biden's leadership, in addition to holding the polluters accountable and setting regulatory standards, he's worked with Congress to get billions of dollars. If we can mobilize as quickly as possible, we'll be holding our communities or keeping our communities safer sooner rather than later. Thank you all.